This video focuses on the invisible zip, also known as a concealed zip. So that's the one there in the center. So just to start off with, again, look at the three main types of zips. You want to be sure to choose the correct zip. The invisible zip or concealed zip from the front where the toggle is. The toggle, first of all, is very discreet, and the zip teeth are not visible. When you turn it over, you can see that the zip teeth are visible. So that's how you know it's the correct zip. The other zip, which is a close-end zip, has a much kind of bigger toggle, less discreet, and the bottom it has a metal or plastic sort of fastening there. It will make it so that it won't open at the end. Okay, but you can see from the front, you can see the zip teeth. And so it is not going to be invisible or concealed. But finally, there is the open end zip, which also has a big thing at the bottom, which makes it so that you can unzip and separate the zip. Okay, so first thing is choose the right zip. So my sample piece of fabric is ready. So I've stitched up and I have my opening where I'm going to place the zip. But now I need to prepare the zip itself. So the first step for sewing in an invisible zip is always to zip your zip down and press the teeth open. So it will be very hard. We need to sew right next to the zip teeth along there. And the way the zip comes, the teeth are sort of folded back, and so we can't get in to sew close enough to the teeth until we actually press along here. So that's the first step. The zip's teeth are now pressed back, so you see they're sitting and cooperating for us, so we'll be able to stitch right in next to them. So the next thing is to line up your zip correctly. So I like to take the garment and come from the outside. So this would be the right side, or the outside of the garment. This would be the right side of the zip. It would be placed in looking like that. So we would know that is the correct way. My zip is now not inside out. And then I would be grabbing the fabric there with my fingers. So I'm turning this bit in like the 1.5 seam allowance, and it's going to sew right along the zip. So when you turn it around that way, then you know this is the correct way to line up the zip. So once you know your zip is facing the correct way, you want to be sure it's placed correctly. So first, look on the inside. Zip the zip all the way down. And the opening of your garment, wherever that is, you want to be sure and place the zip head at least a minimum of 1.5 below this opening. Okay, if you have a longer zip, all the better. You can place it even 3 centimeters below. Is probably more optimal. Okay, but at least 1.5 down. This is because when you have your zip feet on the machine, they have a bit that sticks out the front, and when they are sewing along to try and get into this little spot here, just where the opening starts, they will bump into the zip itself, the zip head, and it won't be able to go forward. So that's why you need to make sure that this is well down so that the presser foot can get in all the way up to the position of the opening. So that's the first thing you check, and then the next thing is you line it up at the top. So we're going to say that this is the top of the garment. There would be seam allowance here. Usually the top of the zip there has a sort of a plastic stopper and a seam allowance of about 1.5. Usually line it down just a few millimeters down from wherever the 1.5 edge is, if you're going to have a facing on the garment that will turn down, and that will be the finished edge. Because of the fold over, you need to allow for about 0.5 millimeters. If it's going to be sewn to a waistband or something like that, you can line it right up at 1.5. So I will pin this along. Now this is in the correct position. One other thing I need to check, I've only just pinned it sort of temporarily, is that the zip, where we're going to sew with the zip teeth, are 1.5 away from the edge of the fabric on the garment. Okay, so, and I need to pin that into place. Usually the tape on the zip is about 1 centimetre, and so usually there's about 0.5 centimetre of fabric here outside of the zip tape. However, you would want to just double check that. Each zip could be slightly different, and I would recommend just taking your measuring tape and measuring to see that you're 1.5. The zip is now pinned correctly on the one side, and the next step is to hand tack it. Some people would probably attempt this, just stitching it down, and when you get more advanced you can with the pins, but when you're learning and as a beginner, I would recommend hand tacking the zip on so that you can take out the pins and your zip is secure in place, in the correct place, and you don't have to worry as you sew about trying to take the pins out and your zip losing its position. So hand tacking, just thread up a needle. I've used a sort of turquoise thread here for the video, so hopefully we can see it, and we're just doing a running stitch. It's just going to be holding a running stitch just means you're taking a stitch, you're going in and you're coming back out. Be sure that I'm holding that in the correct position. Like so. And you'll do that all the way along the zip. So here is the zip, ready to be sewn on the machine. Has its nice tacking, hand tacking completed. So again, you want to be sure and replace your presser foot with the correct presser foot. So this is one of the types of zip foots for the Bernina machine, number 4. It's kind of regular zip foot. You'd use that for open-end zips and the close-end zip. For the invisible zip, there is this foot, the 35, which has the little grooves there that you can put the zip teeth in and stitch along, and it holds it exactly in place and stitches it nice and close to the zip. So the invisible zip foot is set up now with the teeth in the groove, and we're just going to stitch down. Stitch and continue to stitch along. Close to the opening, just make sure that we get all the way to the opening, that we stitch all the way to where the garment is open, and this is where it's really important that the zip head is back from it, so I can actually stitch all the way up to the opening and stitch down. So what we have here is the zip sewn to one side. So what we've done is we've pinned, tacked and sewn down one side of the zip. So now the next step is to do the second side, and you do the same steps. You pin, you tack and you sew. You usually come from the bottom up. So if you start on the first side, pinning, tacking and sewing down, then you want to pin, tack and sew from the bottom up this time. That will help ensure that you don't get a tuck. One of the biggest issues on a zip is that you might on the front have a little tuck at the bottom. a little pucker or something, and that comes from not having this side lined up with that side. So if I don't pin this correctly here, if I pin it down a little bit too much, it will end up out of line and a little tuck there. So you do your best to pin it so that it lines up accurately at the bottom. You can look and see if your zip is swiveled at all. It's definitely not lined up, so try and get it straight and line it up. What I do is I actually zip it up so that I can see that it's definitely straight, and then I pin and tack while the zip is actually zipped up, and I'll zip the zip back down, and I find that the most effective way to ensure that you don't get a tuck or a pucker at the bottom. It can still happen, particularly with more difficult slippy fabrics. This might seem quite easy in calico and quite easy to get the fabric lined up because it doesn't move around and slide around. So with the more difficult fabrics, it's a bit more challenging. So I have this pinned now, and I'm going to take my thread and, like on the other side, tack it all the way up. So now I have my tacking done on the second side, so my zip is nice and secure. So I can look from the outside first of all, because it's been hand sewn, so I can look from the outside and see and check, does it look good? Does it look like, hopefully it looks like there's no tuck at the bottom. So that's also why I like the tacking. It's very hard to turn it around when you've just pinned it. So now I'm taking down the zip. I have to take it down so that I can sew it. And this can be a little tricky. You've got to put the zip toggle there inside. So I've pulled the zip through there, and now I'm ready to stitch the second side down. What I'm going to do is demonstrate with a regular zip foot, just for the benefit of those who don't have the advantage of this nice invisible foot, just to give an idea of how that would go. So I've got my regular zip foot on, and I'm going to move this knob at the top of the machine. It's moved over so that my needle is in position. Reminder that you're only stitching through the one layer of fabric and the zip, so don't fold your fabric over. And we're going to stitch using the regular zip foot and just get in as close as we can to the teeth. So I am having to kind of curl it back just for the start, get into the teeth to be sure that I'm close to the teeth. So this foot is not holding and making sure that my stitching is in an exact place in relation to this teeth. So I have to control it with my hands and my eyes. We now have our completed zip, and we just need to pull the zip head through. So the toggle there, and we kind of put it, sometimes you can grab the toggle and pull it through, or you can just grab the zip head there and try and pull it along. It's always a bit tight just at that place of the opening because the toggle has to actually make it through that position. Okay, and we zip it up, and ta-da! We have our nice zip. So one side was sewn with the regular zip foot and one was sewn with the invisible foot attachment. So you can see that there shouldn't be any of the zip showing at all. It is an invisible or concealed zip. However, if there is something tight on the body, it would pull a bit and you might see a little bit of the zip. And that's why you still need to match your zip and your zip tape colour to the garment. And that is our invisible zip.